to quit. South Carolina will vote on Saturday, but on Sunday, I'll still be running for president. I'm not going anywhere. Dropping out would be the easy route. I've never taken the easy route. I've been the underdog in every race I've ever run. I've always been David taking on Goliath.
That was Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley vowing to continue on with her campaign for the White House in the state of South Carolina, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah, that in her recent speech of the state of her race there. This is despite the former UN ambassador losing to Trump in all of the Republican primary and caucus contests thus far. Even we'll show you recent polling showing Haley trailing Trump in her home state of South Carolina by as many as 30 points. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley joining us now. Governor, good to see you, and thanks so much for answering the call here. As you well know, it's a big one this Saturday, your home state, which you used to govern, South Carolina, the primary on Saturday. You see the polling. I've seen your interviews. I know you know where you stand and where, again, the former president stands. You are the last one standing against former President Trump. What do you say to South Carolina voters Saturday? What is your message today, even when they see the polls, they see where Trump is at, they see what he's done in Iowa, Nevada, New Hampshire? What is your message today?
Well, my message is early voting is today. The election is on Saturday. You know, in general elections, we're given a choice. In a primary, we make our choice. People need to understand the importance of voting in this primary. But you know what I'll tell you is so many of Americans across our country want to see a shift in America. They want to right this ship. They want to see things get better. And the only way things are going to get better is if Republicans win. And that's the key thing. A Marquette poll just came out this morning. Donald Trump and Joe Biden, it's margin of error. I defeat Joe Biden by 18 points. What does it do to get someone you like in a primary if that person can't win in a general? That's what we're dealing with. We have got to secure our border. We've got to get this wasteful spending under control. We've got to get our kids reading. We need law and order back in our cities. We've got to prevent war. You can't do any of that if you have a candidate that can't win. 70% of Americans don't want to see a Trump-Biden rematch. They have said that they are the two most disliked politicians in America. 60% of Americans think Donald Trump's too old to be president and Joe Biden's too old to be president. This is time for a new generational conservative leader that can put in 8 years of hard work, day and night, and get D.C. cleaned up and get results back for the American people. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I'll do for South Carolina. That's what I'll do for this country.
As you point out, early voting is underway today, so people can cast their ballots. And of course, we're hoping to get the results on Saturday. We hope our viewers will stay with Newsmax for those results. In the meantime, Governor, you know, the topic of abortion will likely be the focus when it comes to the general election. Recently, the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos can legally be defined as children under state law. You were asked about this by a reporter. You said you can see where the court is coming from. Let's play that sound.
I mean, embryos to me are babies. So
even those created through IVF.
I mean, I had artificial insemination. Yeah. That's how I had my son. So when you look at, you know, one thing is to have to save sperm or to save eggs. But when you talk about an embryo, you are talking about, to me, that's a life. And so I do see where that's coming from when they talk about that.
And obviously, this is a very personal topic. And so my question for you, Governor, is for women, including Republican women, maybe even those who are pro-life, should they feel guilty of doing something wrong if they've not implanted all of the embryos they may have developed through the IVF process?
Not at all. This is where we need to have really respect and humanity. I've said this with the pro-life and abortion situation. I'll say this with the IVF and embryo situation. What I feel has gotten away from the conversation that's so important is the relationship between the woman and the physician. It is very important. Michael and I had trouble having both of our children. We had to go through fertility. It is a brutal process, and I feel for any woman that has to go through this. But when you're going through that conversation that you have with your physician matters. I personally am pro-life, and I saw that those embryos, those to me were babies. Like, that's how I look at that. Other people may see it different. States are going to decide on this. Be very careful how you do this because, number one, you don't want to take those fertility treatments away from women. It is very important that women like me have the ability to have that blessing of a baby. But you also want to treat those embryos with respect, whoever is holding them, and make sure that there's a clear indication of what is expected from the parents who provide it and what's expected from the provider that holds them. But you also want to have the relationship with the physician because these embryos, some are viable, some are not viable. And so you don't want to just treat them all the same. This really is a case-by-case basis. And the best way to handle this is to allow the most control to be with the parents and the physician to make that decision together. Hugely important.
Talking about those going through a very sensitive matter, well, if it happened in Alabama, they're going to have difficulty. The University of Alabama at Birmingham Health, the largest healthcare conglomerate there, UAB, announcing they're pausing in vitro fertilization procedures right now because of this ruling. Moving to election season, this issue, do you expect this issue to affect the election this fall, specifically for Republicans? Could this be used?
Well, I don't always worry about what's an election issue and what's not. I don't think that's the right way to govern. What I do hope is that there will be a respectful conversation about how these embryos need to be handled. You have these things and a case will go and dictate one way or the other. We saw a case in Texas where this poor woman had to, her baby had passed and she was 20 weeks along and she couldn't get an abortion to take care of that. That's a situation, again, it needs to be between the patient and the doctor. That's why I've asked for consensus on a national level, but every state needs to look at this carefully. We don't want to do anything that's going to take away these abilities for women to be able to get pregnant and to have babies. That is extremely important. If Michael and I hadn't had that, we would be childless right now. And we have two blessings that I'm so grateful for. But we need to, again, make sure that the most control goes in the hands of the woman and the parents, and that the protection is provided by the physician who is counseling them. That continues to be the big priority. That's how I will talk about it, with respect, with humanity, and with dignity, and that's the way I think the rest of the country should talk about it.
So just to clarify, a federal approach to dealing with this particular topic is off the table for you?
Again, I think that what we could do is I think states should decide. It's always best if it's kept in the hands of the people, just like we're dealing with the pro-life abortion side now. I think that's closest to the people is where it should be. On a federal level, what I would say is you'd have to have consensus on this. You'd have to be very high level to make sure that it's not ever treated, in a way that it shouldn't be. I said that on abortion. If you have to have 60 Senate votes, then let's just say we will ban late-term abortions, that will encourage adoptions, that doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them, that contraception is accessible, and that no state law should say to a woman who's had an abortion that she's going to jail or getting the death penalty. We have to make sure that our number one goal is how do you save as many babies as you can and support as many moms as you can. This is the conversation we need to have. No more dividing people on this issue. Let's deal with it in a godly, human way that respects every person's decision and every person's way of dealing with this.
All right, I'll move on to this topic if we can. CPAC is happening right now. Again, you're campaigning. Donald Trump will be headlining on Saturday. He will be at CPAC. Here's a live look right now. It is obviously the largest gathering of conservatives in the nation and arguably in the world, as you well know. You are, again, not there right now, if I'm not mistaken. How do you go about that, moving forward in this race when you hear so much support behind the largest group of conservatives, fully behind Donald Trump, your opponent?
Well, I am a conservative. I was a Tea Party candidate. I won as governor. I defended our country at the UN and put the countries in their place. So I'm a conservative. But look, the CPAC has very much become a Trump coalition. We know that, and that's fine, and I respect that. And I respect what every one of those conservatives at CPAC wants to see happen. But none of those things they want to see happen is going to happen if we have someone who can't win. If that Marquette poll shows I defeat Joe Biden by 18 points and Donald Trump is at margin of error, What I will say to everybody is don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't participate in these primaries. We have to win. That's what I worry about for Republicans. I worry about the House. I worry about the Senate. I worry about governorships. I worry about school boards. We have got to start winning again. Donald Trump, he lost it for us in 2018. He lost it for us in 2020. He lost it for us in 2022. I voted for him twice. I was proud to serve America in his administration. But you look again last week what happened. Republicans lost the vote on Israel. Republicans lost the vote on Mayorkas. The RNC chair lost her job. Donald Trump had his fingerprints on all of that. Everything he does is chaos, and everything happens, we lose. At some point, we've got to realize that we can like him all we want, but we can't win with him. And Republicans have to win. There will be a female president of the United States. It will either be me or it will be Kamala Harris. Because if Donald Trump is the nominee, you mark my words, we will have a President Kamala Harris, and our country cannot afford that.
All right, it is a race to secure the GOP nomination. A ways to go. You collect delegates along the way. We'll be watching to see who gets awarded the most this Saturday in South Carolina. Former Governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, Republican presidential candidate, thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thanks so much. Go to NikkiHaley.com.